Coming up on Arirang News. The desperately awaited vital aid convoy is expected to enter the blockaded Gaza Strip this Saturday after being delayed for at least a day. Amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, U.S. President Joe Biden vows to send an urgent budget request to Congress to support Israel as well as Ukraine. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says that he wants to establish a stable and future-oriented relationship with Russia. This as he met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Pyongyang, with the two vowing to faithfully carry out the agreements made during the Kim-Putin summit. In light of Hanuk Day tomorrow, we take a listen to stories of those who work to spread the beauty of the Korean traditional outfit and its 2,000-year-old heritage around the world. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza amid the Israel-Hamas conflict. Urgently needed aid, including medical supplies, food, and water, are expected to enter the blockaded Gaza this Saturday. They're now piled up in Egypt at the Rafah border crossing, with the opening of it being delayed for at least a day. Amid the intensifying conflict, the Pentagon says a U.S. Navy warship intercepted missiles heading from Yemen, potentially toward Israel. Shin-Young leads us off. Trucks carrying aid, including food and medical supplies, have lined up waiting for the Rafah border crossing, currently the only route for aid to enter Gaza from outside of Israel to open from the Egyptian side.
We are staying here for Palestinians. We will not leave until the aid enters Palestine, to Gaza, to our Palestinian brothers.
Initially, it was expected to be open at some point on Friday, but this now seems uncertain. CNN reports that it is not expected to open on Friday due to a day-long delay in road repairs to the crossing in Rafah and making sure the deliveries can be sustained. It added, citing U.S. officials, that there are expectations that the first convoy of aid will arrive this weekend, possibly by Saturday. More than 150 trucks with food, water, and fuel are waiting at the border crossing. Meanwhile, fears grow that the fighting between Israel and Hamas could escalate into a wider geopolitical conflict. The Pentagon said on Thursday local time that a U.S. Navy ship in the Red Sea shot down 3 land attack cruise missiles, as well as several drones that had been launched from Yemen. According to the Pentagon spokesperson, the missile and drones were fired by Iranian-backed Houthi militants in Yemen, potentially towards targets in Israel.
Information about these engagements is still being processed. We cannot say for certain what these missiles and drones were targeting, but they were launched from Yemen, heading north along the Red Sea, potentially towards targets in Israel.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant alluded to a ground assault in the near future. He told troops gathered at the Gaza border on Thursday that while they are now looking at Gaza from afar, an order will soon come that would allow them to see the Palestinian enclave from the inside. Since the Hamas militant attack on Israel on October 7th, the number of deaths has reportedly surpassed over 5,000. The Gaza Health Ministry reported that Israel's retaliation to the Hamas attack has left at least 3,785 Palestinians dead, while the UN Office for the Coordination of Human Affairs said the death toll in Israel as of Thursday stood at 1,400. With this, many nations and international organizations are calling for a ceasefire to prevent a humanitarian crisis from further escalating. Shin-Young, Arirang News. Having returned home from Israel, President Biden spoke to the nation, saying he would ask Congress to approve a substantial aid package for Israel as well as Ukraine. Choi Soo-young with more.
President Joe Biden addressed the nation in a rare primetime speech from the Oval Office on Thursday at 8 p.m. local time. In the speech, President Biden emphasized the importance of Israel and Ukraine's success in the relevant wars and stated support for a substantial security package worth billions of dollars in military assistance for both countries.
I'm going to send to Congress an urgent budget request to fund America's national security needs, to support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine.
He also asked Congress to send Ukraine the weapons to defend itself without interruption. Biden said support for Israel and Ukraine was vital for the national security of the U.S., with threats to America and the world continuing to rise.
It's natural to ask, why does this matter to America? So let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security.
Biden said that both Hamas and Putin have a shared common goal. They want to completely annihilate their neighboring democratic countries. He added that the U.S. must make sure that the Israeli government has everything it needs to protect its country, but he also cautioned Israel not to be blinded by rage. Biden didn't leave out mentioning humanitarian assistance for the innocent people of Gaza. Although some doubting voices have also emerged regarding continuous support from the U.S.
Ukraine was dissatisfied due to limited funding, so the U.S. has to decide on the allocation of support for Ukraine, Israel, and even Palestinians in Gaza to maintain balance. However, I believe many people might question whether the U.S. economy can sustain this support indefinitely. How long can they provide unlimited assistance?
According to Reuters, Biden asked Congress for a $100 emergency budget, including $60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel, and $10 billion for humanitarian efforts. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
The latest flare-up in the conflict between Israel and Hamas, which began with the devastating Hamas attack earlier this month, has been going on for almost 2 weeks now. An Israeli ground offensive appears to be imminent amid a rising death toll of over 5,000. Our Lee takes a closer look at what's been unfolding in the region and what comes next.
Hamas's recent attack on Israel was more deadly than past operations. It may represent the single worst loss of life in Israel's history, and the mass kidnapping of an estimated 250 civilians has shocked the country. One expert told Arirang News that Israel is now out for blood, which is why a ground operation seems inevitable. They added that no Israeli leader can credibly go for marginal gains against Hamas. The question now is how deep Israeli forces will go into the enclaves and how long they will stay there.
So Israel's military objective will now be destroying Hamas, or at least cripple them severely. It will try demolish Hamas infrastructures and weapons, and these aim in return will likely require at least a temporary occupation of all or part of Gaza. But the Hamas is simply to entrench it in too many places to be rooted out with bombs and raid alone. So it will be the war that will last it for quite a while.
The Israeli government extending the time frame for everyone to leave northern Gaza and airstriking Gaza in multiple locations means a possible ceasefire seems far away. Israeli troops have been gathering around Gaza in preparation for a ground invasion, which seems to be just a matter of time. Experts say there may be some national markets affected by the conflict, but it is not expected to have a broader global impact. But if the conflict expands, there will be bigger concerns.
That is exactly the area that Israeli militaries are doing their military operation now. So a southern part of Gaza, such as Rafah and Khan Yunis, are now not being attacked by Israeli forces. That's why Joe Biden just come to Israel to have four-party talk, which was the Abbas administration from West Bank and Jordan, Israel, and United States. So the political purpose behind this is to marginalize Hamas Palestinian group in Gaza.
The same expert added that the key factor will be Israel's strike strategy.
If Israeli army stay a little bit longer and occupy Gaza for a longer period of time, then there will be a possibility of civilian casualty happen. And if those kind of things happen, then it will create a rise of resentment around the Arab nation. It might give the excuses for the other political entities, such as who has animosity against Israel.
Israel attacking Gaza is not entirely unprecedented. However, this multi-pronged operation through land, air, and sea is prospected to be different ever since Hamas seized power in 2007. Ian-hee, Arirang News.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov wrapped up his trip to Pyongyang, having met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un as part of a follow-up to last month's summit talks between Kim and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. Following his meeting with Russia's top diplomat, Kim vowed to build far-reaching ties with Russia and carry out what was agreed at the Kim-Putin summit. Choi Min-jung reports.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's trip to North Korea has further strengthened Pyongyang and Moscow's bilateral ties. That's according to North Korea's state-run television on Friday, which aired a video of its leader Kim Jong-un meeting with Lavrov in Pyongyang. The two had met the day before as part of efforts to deepen bilateral ties, roughly a month after Kim traveled to Russia to hold a rare summit with President Vladimir Putin, which involved a possible arms deal. For Kim, the talks were used to establish a long-term plan for the new era of stable and future-oriented relations. Lavrov conveyed Putin's best wishes and noted that Russia is ready to implement everything that was agreed upon during the summit. But both Kim and Lavrov expressed their will to strengthen relations from a longer-term perspective.
Candid opinions were exchanged on important issues of mutual interest, including the planned expansion of bilateral cooperation in all aspects through joint efforts between North Korea and Russia.
Nothing's been said publicly so far about Putin's possible visit to Pyongyang, but it was likely to have been discussed. This comes as the Kremlin had earlier said that the Russian leader has accepted Kim's offer to visit North Korea during the summit. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign ministry said that Russia and North Korea have agreed to resist Washington's hegemonic policy, which it says destabilizes the situation in the Asia-Pacific region. Russia also said it supports the establishment of regular negotiations to discuss security issues on the Korean peninsula without preconditions. Without giving further comment, South Korea reaffirmed its existing position of pursuing the resumption of talks with North Korea.
The government maintains its position of resuming dialogue without preconditions with North Korea, as announced at the Seoul-Washington-Tokyo summit.
Lavrov wrapped up his two-day visit to Pyongyang, where he also held talks with his North Korean counterpart Seosan on ways to develop bilateral relations. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Defense Minister Shin Won-sik and his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin have reaffirmed their commitment to the Seoul-Washington alliance and discussed ways to expand the scope of their cooperation. In a phone call earlier on this Friday morning, the two defense leaders emphasized the importance of maintaining a strong combined defense posture to respond to North Korea's nuclear provocations and agreed to communicate frequently on key regional security matters. The call is the first between the two officials since Shin's recent appointment as defense minister. Come next month, that is November, Shin and Austin are poised to meet at the Security Consultative Meeting and the ROK UN Command Member States Defense Ministerial Meeting. The U.S. Army has charged Private Travis King with desertion, among other crimes, following his fleeing to North Korea in July, where he was held for 2 months. According to Reuters and the Associated Press, King was charged with a total of 8 counts. Besides desertion, he's accused of assaulting fellow soldiers last year, unlawfully possessing alcohol, making a false statement, and possessing sexual images of a child. King fled to North Korea while on a civilian tour of the Joint Security Area. He was released from North Korean custody and returned to the United States in September. U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell believes American inflation remains high and that his committee is, quote, proceeding carefully on making decisions about the extent of additional policy amid the range of uncertainties. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Speaking at the Economic Club of New York on Thursday, U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said inflation in the U.S. is still too high, and in order to bring it down to the central bank's target of 2%, it will likely require a slower growing economy and job market. Powell says although inflation has cooled significantly compared to a year ago, the economy is growing faster than the Fed had expected and could continue to keep inflation high. According to the U.S. Fed chair, in order to reach the target inflation of 2%, it will likely require a period of below-trend growth and some further softening in labor market conditions. Still, Powell refrained from commenting on the central bank pushing for higher interest rates to further ease inflation, instead saying that he and the policymakers will continue to analyze data to make their decisions.
Given the uncertainties and risks, and given how far we've come, the committee is proceeding carefully. We will make decisions about the extent of additional policy firming and how long policy will remain restrictive based on the totality of the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks.
Meanwhile, amid the prolonged war in Ukraine and ongoing armed conflict between Israel and Hamas, Powell says geopolitical tensions pose risks to global economic activity, adding that economic implications remain highly uncertain. Powell also called the attack on Israel and the prospect of more lives lost horrifying. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho says high interest rates could stay for a bit longer due to global inflation. Speaking at a parliamentary audit on Friday, he added that the government is aware of global uncertainties such as rising oil prices and slow economic recovery, and that it has been thoroughly preparing policies to respond. Chu also said the authorities have been responding to possible implications led by the Israel-Hamas war on Korea's financial and foreign exchange markets, as well as the real economy. When asked about foreign exchange reserves, he cited organizations including the IMF having evaluated the country has enough to be able to respond to external shocks. In the wake of the announcement of a government plan to bolster the nation's medical system, which includes an increase in the enrollment of quota at medical schools, related talks get off to a start at the National Assembly. The ruling party is forming a special task force, and so does the main opposition party, while criticizing the government. Our Lee Si-hoo reports on the latest.
South Korea's rival lawmakers are taking swift steps to improve the country's medical system, supporting the government's main push for a raise in the medical school enrollment quota. The ruling People Power Party announced on Friday that it's launching a task force to support the plan. The team will include its chief policymaker and members of related committees, as well as medical professionals and ordinary citizens. They will work to reach a consensus on the specifics, as well as work on new projects that will, quote, synergize with it.
The plan shows the government's strong will to not only increase the number of doctors, but also to offer an equal quality of medical services in all regions of the country.
The PPP says it will negotiate with the opposition after the specifics are outlined through talks with the administration. While the main opposition Democratic Party does agree with the need for more doctors, it is specifically calling for a concrete scale in enrollment increase and is urging the administration not to use people's health for political gain.
This is why the government and the ruling party are criticized for approaching this issue only to turn the tide, using public health as collateral without a consistent philosophy on public health and healthcare policies.
The party is forming a separate task force to push for its own agendas, such as the establishment of a public medical school and measures to bolster the regional medical infrastructure through stronger medical education at national universities. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo said at a meeting of ministers on Friday that increasing the number of doctors will not completely solve the shortage of those in local and essential practices. Rather, Mr. Han said that pan-governmental responses and cooperation between ministries are needed for a successful implementation. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
South Korea has reported its first cases of lumpy skin disease, a viral disease that affects cattle. According to the Agricultural Ministry on Friday, 4 cows were found to have had symptoms at a farm in Seosan, Chungcheongnam-do Province. Lumpy skin disease is transmitted by blood-feeding insects. It does not pose a risk to humans, but causes blisters for cows, which reduces milk production, resulting in significant economic damage to farms. In response, the ministry raised the crisis alert level to serious, the highest level in its 4-tier system. Authorities have issued a nationwide movement ban on cow farms from 2 p.m. for 48 hours and plan to call some 40 other cows at the affected facility. Tomorrow, October 21st, is Hanbok Day. It's a day designated by South Korea's Culture Ministry to raise awareness of the Korean traditional outfit, hanbok. Ahead of Hanbok Day, our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin listened to the stories of people who are working to promote and continue hanbok's legacy.
Hanbok. It means Korean clothing. The earliest records of hanbok date all the way back to the ancient Three Kingdoms period. While the tradition of wearing hanbok every day has dwindled, there are those who are working to make sure this 2,000-year-old heritage isn't forgotten. Like hanbok and pattern designer Jang Ha-eun, the CEO of emerging hanbok brand Uru. Her brand designed Blackpink's hanbok costumes for their Coachella headliner performance this year. Chang's designs draw inspiration from traditional Korean objects such as roof tiles or flowers. All her designs, whether that be hanbok or accessories like hats, bags, and even scrunchies, feature her unique patterns and are infused with a creative touch.
People tend to save wearing hanbok for special occasions, which is a bit of a shame. I thought we could set aside traditional hanboks for those moments and introduce modified, newly designed hanboks for everyday wear. This could help hanbok become more beloved for longer.
Hanbok designer Kim Ji-won has been in the industry for nearly 3 decades. Kim, who studied Korean traditional dance, created her first hanbok brand for dancers in 1994. In 2017, she launched her second brand, focusing on making more wearable and comfortable hanboks. She was in charge of the opening and closing ceremony costumes of the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics and Paralympics. She says she's witnessed a positive change in Korea's hanbok culture.
In the past, hanboks were primarily concerned with adhering to traditional aesthetics like collar and sleeve shapes. Nowadays, brands are striving to infuse these garments with historical meaning and significance. The shift has led to a broader array of items with various designs within the hanbok world.
Outside of Korea are those dedicated to promoting hanbok globally. The Asian American Youth Council, for instance, successfully requested New Jersey to declare the first overseas hanbok day in 2021.
On this day, you get to see political figures donning with Korean hanbok within the fashion show, and thereby integrating traditional Korean attire into a display of cultural respect.
These are just some of the people who are stitching together tradition and innovation to make sure that hanbok is a lasting legacy. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Tomorrow is forecast to be the coldest morning of the season so far. A surge of frigid air mass will enter the country, and most inland regions will see lows plunging to single figures. Seoul will be starting off at 5 degrees Celsius, but with the cold wind chills, temperatures may feel colder than the actual readings. Warmer conditions will prevail by Sunday afternoon. Inland regions may see frost for the morning hours, with temperatures plummeting significantly overnight. For mountainous regions where readings will be dropping to negative figures, ice may appear as well. Please look out for the potential damage to agricultural crops. Also, gusty winds are in the forecast for all the coastlines. Aside from Jeju Island, the entire nation will see lows in single figures. Tomorrow, Seoul and Daejeon will be starting off at 5 degrees. Highs in Seoul will get up to 16, Daejeon and Gwangju 18, Busan will be topping out at 19 degrees. Morning temperatures will get a touch warmer by next week. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this Friday night newscast. Thank you for watching. Hope everyone has a great weekend and a good night.